Neanderthal genetics, legacy and misconceptions, the DNA we still carry. Do you know that hidden inside your DNA is a story that stretches back tens of thousands of years, a story written not just by modern humans, but by another species entirely? That's right, most people alive today carry the genetic legacy of Neanderthals. They may have disappeared from the earth 40,000 years ago, but they are still alive in us. For centuries, Neanderthals were dismissed as dumb, brutish cave dwellers, clumsy survivors who failed while we thrived. But modern science has completely rewritten that story. Today, we know Neanderthals were intelligent, resourceful, and deeply human in their own way. They spoke, they cared for one another, they made tools, and perhaps even music. And most importantly, they didn't vanish completely. Their DNA runs through our veins. So what exactly did we inherit from Neanderthals? Could your allergies, your skin tone, or even the way you sleep at night be a gift from them? Did they leave us more than just genes did? They shaped the very course of human evolution. In this video, we'll peel back the layers of myth and uncover the truth about Neanderthals. We'll explore the genetic ties that still connect us, debunk some of the most persistent misconceptions, and reveal just how much of their world lives on inside ours. From the myths that painted them as stupid brutes, to the reality of their intelligence and creativity. From theories of love and war between species, to the question of whether Neanderthals invented language. This journey will challenge everything you thought you knew about our ancient cousins. By the end, you'll see Neanderthals not as a failed branch of humanity, but as an essential part of who we are. Their DNA is not just a scientific curiosity, it's a reminder that the story of human evolution is far richer, more tangled, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. So let's begin our journey into the genetic legacy, cultural impact, and enduring mysteries of the Neanderthals, the humans who live on inside us. Chapter 1. Do you have Neanderthal DNA? Imagine spitting into a tube, sending it off to a genetic testing company, and weeks later discovering that part of you is not entirely Homo sapiens. That's the surprising reality for millions of people today. Nearly every person of non-African descent carries Neanderthal DNA in their genome. But how do we know this? The story begins in the late 20th century, when scientists first extracted ancient DNA from Neanderthal bones. These samples, preserved in caves across Europe and Asia, revealed astonishing results. When compared to modern human genomes, the data showed unmistakable signs of interbreeding between our species and Neanderthals roughly 50,000 to 60,000 years ago. So what does that mean for you? If your ancestry traces back to Europe, Asia, or the Middle East, you likely carry between 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. While that may sound small, it's significant enough to shape parts of who you are today. Collectively, modern humans retain about 20 to 40% of the Neanderthal genome scattered across our species. In other words, the Neanderthal didn't vanish entirely, their blueprint was woven into ours. Some of these inherited traits are subtle, like the way your immune system responds to diseases. Others are more visible, influencing skin tone, hair type, or even height. Still others lie hidden, affecting things like metabolism, sleep cycles, or how your body processes certain foods. You may never realize it, but parts of your daily life are guided by ancient genes. Of course, not everyone carries the same Neanderthal markers. Genetic variation means your inner Neanderthal may look different from your neighbors. Some people inherited stronger immune defenses, while others may have received traits linked to allergies or certain health risks. What's fascinating is that this discovery changes the way we see ourselves. For generations, Neanderthals were portrayed as others, a separate, inferior species that went extinct while we advanced. But the truth is, they are part of us. Their DNA is carried not just in laboratories or fossil records, but in our cells, our bodies, and our lives. So, do you have Neanderthal DNA? If you're watching this, chances are the answer is yes. And that tiny fraction of your genome is more powerful than you might think. It's a living connection to an ancient past. Chapter 2. What your genes say about your inner Neanderthal. So, you carry Neanderthal DNA, but what does that really mean? Is it just a scientific curiosity, or does it actually affect your life? The answer is yes, it does. The genes you inherited from Neanderthals influence everything from your immune system to your appearance, and even the way your body responds to the modern world. Let's start with health. One of the biggest gifts from Neanderthals was immunity. Living in Ice Age Eurasia, They evolved defenses against local pathogens, viruses, bacteria, and parasites that our African ancestors had never encountered. When modern humans interbred with Neanderthals, some of those protective genes entered our DNA, boosting our ability to survive in new environments. Without them, it's possible early humans would have struggled to adapt, but not every genetic hand-me-down was positive. Some Neanderthal genes are linked to autoimmune disorders, allergies, and even depression. For example, certain markers influence how sensitive we are to pain, how easily we get sunburned, or how our bodies respond to nicotine. It's a reminder that evolution is about trade-offs. What helped Neanderthals survive then may not be as useful today. Appearance is another area where their legacy lingers. Variants in Neanderthal DNA are associated with hair and skin traits, sometimes lighter tones, sometimes thicker hair. In fact, some freckles and skin sensitivity to sunlight have been traced back to them. These traits made sense in Ice Age Europe, where lighter skin improved vitamin D absorption in low sunlight. Even sleep patterns may be Neanderthal gifts. Some genes linked to circadian rhythms, the body's internal clock, can affect whether you're a night owl or an early riser. Imagine, your struggle to get out of bed in the morning might be an echo of Ice Age survival strategies. What's truly fascinating is how personal this is. Each person carries a slightly different set of Neanderthal genes. While one individual may have DNA linked to immunity, another may carry markers influencing metabolism or fat storage. Together, these fragments form a mosaic of traits passed down over millennia. So when we talk about your inner Neanderthal, it isn't just a metaphor, it's written into your biology. Every allergy you sneeze through, every sunburn you get, and even the way your body processes food may carry the fingerprints of Neanderthals. Far from extinct, they are alive and shaping our daily lives in ways we are only beginning to understand. Chapter 3. Top Myths about Neanderthals. Debunked. For over a century, Neanderthals have been the poster child for cavemen. Pop culture painted them as hunched, dim-witted, grunting brutes who barely knew how to use fire. But modern science tells a very different story. Let's debunk some of the most common myths. Myth 1. Neanderthals were dumb. This is probably the biggest misconception. The truth: Neanderthals had brains slightly larger than ours, and they were highly skilled toolmakers. They mastered stone tool technology, crafted spears, and even developed adhesives to attach stone blades to wooden handles. Calling them stupid is not only wrong, it underestimates a rival species who thrived for hundreds of thousands of years. Myth 2. Neanderthals didn't talk. For years, people assumed Neanderthals communicated only with grunts. But genetic studies of the FOXP to gene linked to language in humans show that Neanderthals shared this gene with us. Their vocal anatomy also suggests they could produce complex sounds. Did they have full languages like us? Maybe not, but they certainly weren't silent. Myth 3. Neanderthals looked nothing like us. Sure, they had some differences: stockier builds, broader noses, heavy brows. But if you dressed a Neanderthal in modern clothes and sat them on a subway, you might not notice. Reconstructions show just how human they really looked. Myth 4. Neanderthals never created art. Archaeological evidence has shattered this myth. Caves in Spain contain red ochre paintings dated to before modern humans arrive, likely made by Neanderthals. They also crafted ornaments, used pigments, and may have engaged in symbolic rituals. They weren't mindless. They had creativity and culture. Myth 5. Neanderthals and humans never mixed. This one is flat out wrong. Genetic evidence proves interbreeding happened multiple times. Without it, millions of us wouldn't carry Neanderthal DNA today. So why do these myths persist? Partly because the first Neanderthal skeletons discovered in the 1800s were reconstructed incorrectly, making them look upright. And partly because humans love to believe we're superior, that we alone represent intelligence and progress. But the reality is clear. Neanderthals weren't dumb, brutish, or irrelevant. They were human in their own way, complex, adaptable, and capable of survival for nearly 300,000 years. Debunking these myths doesn't just restore their dignity, it reshapes how we view ourselves. Chapter 4. Neanderthals were not stupid. Here's the proof. For decades, Neanderthals were dismissed as evolutionary dead-end survivors. Yes, but supposedly too simple-minded to compete with smarter Homo sapiens. Yet every new discovery tells us that this stereotype is not just wrong, It's insulting to one of humanity's closest relatives. First, let's look at technology. Neanderthals mastered mastery in stone tools, carefully crafted flakes and blades that required planning and precision. They weren't just smashing rocks together. They followed step-by-step methods to produce standardized shapes. Archaeologists even find evidence that they improved on techniques, over time proof of innovation. But tools were only the beginning. Neanderthals made composite weapons, wooden spears tipped with sharpened stone or hardened by fire, at sites like SG Skinning in Germany. Spears dating back over 300,000 years reveal advanced craftsmanship, designed for balance and accuracy. Some were throwing spears, others thrusting weapons, showing they understood hunting strategies. Then there's evidence of chemistry. Neanderthals created glue-like substances by heating birch bark in oxygen conditions to produce tar. This wasn't an accident. It required controlling fire in complex ways and repeating the process for consistent results, skills that rival early human ingenuity. Their intelligence also shines through in survival strategies. They adapted to Ice Age Europe, managing fire, building shelters, and tailoring clothing from animal hides. They coordinated hunts against massive prey like mammoths and bison, which required communication, cooperation, and planning. And let's not forget social intelligence. Burial sites suggest Neanderthals cared for their sick and elderly. Individuals with severe injuries lived long after they should have perished. This wasn't possible without empathy, group cohesion, and deliberate caregiving. Even in art and symbolism, Neanderthals left their mark. From cave paintings and carved objects to the use of pigments and feathers, they expressed something beyond survival, a spark of creativity and identity. So, were Neanderthals stupid? The evidence says otherwise. They were engineers, hunters, caregivers, and perhaps even artists. They survived in some of the harshest climates on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. If intelligence is measured by adaptability, creativity, and survival, then Neanderthals were anything but dumb. In fact, the real question is, if they were so capable, why did they disappear? That mystery is less about their lack of intelligence and more about the twists of history and environment. Chapter 5. Are modern humans part Neanderthal? For most of history, humans believed we were completely separate from Neanderthals, a superior species that replaced them. But the truth is far more complicated. We are not just their successors, we are also their descendants. Around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, modern humans leaving Africa encountered Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia. These meetings weren't always hostile. Archaeological and genetic evidence shows that interbreeding took place not once, but multiple times. That means that every child born from these unions became a living bridge between the two species. Fast forward to today, if your ancestry traces back to Europe, Asia, or the Middle East, about 1 to 2% of your DNA is Neanderthal in origin. That might sound tiny, but across billions of people, it adds up to something incredible. Nearly 40% of the Neanderthal genome survives, scattered across modern humans. In a sense, Neanderthals never fully disappeared, they live on in us. What about people of African descent? For a long time, scientists thought they carried no Neanderthal DNA. But newer studies suggest that some Neanderthal genes made their way back into Africa through migrations of early humans who had already interbred. So the legacy of Neanderthals is global, not limited to one region. The traits we inherited are diverse. Some genes strengthen our immune systems, helping us fight infections. Others affect skin tone, hair texture, or how our bodies adapt to sunlight. Some even influence mental health, metabolism, or sleep cycles. This blending of DNA challenges the old idea of strict boundaries between species. Neanderthals and humans weren't completely separate, they were close enough to fall in love, form families, and raise children. And through those unions, they became part of our story forever. So, are modern humans part Neanderthal? The answer is yes. Not in the sense that we're hybrids walking around with half-and-half identities, but in the deeper truth that our species carries their fingerprints in every cell. We are a mosaic of ancient peoples, stitched together by evolution and time. The Neanderthals may have vanished as a distinct group, but their blood flows through ours. They are not just a chapter in history, they are part of who we are. Chapter 6. Why Neanderthals matter more than ever. At first glance, Neanderthals may seem like a distant curiosity, an extinct species, frozen in time. But in reality, they matter today more than ever before. Their story isn't just about the past, it's about who we are right now and who we might become. First, Neanderthals teach us about human diversity. For too long, history painted a picture of one linear path of progress: modern humans replacing inferior species. But the discovery of Neanderthal DNA proves our evolution was more complex, more interwoven. We didn't just outcompete Neanderthals, we absorbed them. Their survival strategies, their strengths, and even their vulnerabilities live on in us. This challenges the old narrative of superiority and invites us to see humanity as a tapestry woven from many threads. Second, Neanderthals remind us of resilience. They thrived in Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, facing freezing climates, scarce resources, and fierce predators. Their survival shows us that intelligence isn't about smartphones or skyscrapers, it's about adapting, enduring, and working together. In a time when our species faces global challenges like climate change, pandemics, and resource scarcity, the lessons of Neanderthal endurance feel more relevant than ever. Third, they force us to rethink what it means to be human. For centuries, we defined humanity by traits like art, language, or empathy. But evidence shows Neanderthals shared many of these qualities. They painted caves, buried their dead, and cared for the sick. They may not have been identical to us, but they weren't less than. Their existence expands our definition of humanity, making it more inclusive and less arrogant. Finally, Neanderthals matter because they connect us to a shared past. The fact that their DNA still flows in our veins means they are not just fossils in a museum, they are family. Their story is not one of failure, but of transformation. They live on in our immune systems, our features, our bodies, and perhaps even in our behavior. In short, Neanderthals matter because they show us that evolution is not about survival of the fittest, it's about survival of the connected. And in remembering them, we are reminded of ourselves. Chapter 7: Neanderthals and Modern Humans, Love, War, and DNA. When modern humans and Neanderthals first met, it wasn't a single moment, it was a series of encounters stretching across thousands of years. Sometimes these meetings were hostile, sometimes peaceful, and sometimes surprisingly intimate. The story of their relationship is a mixture of love, war, and legacy. Let's start with conflict. Archaeological evidence suggests competition between the two groups was inevitable. Both species hunted large Ice Age animals, gathered resources, and claimed the same shelters. In areas where food was scarce, tensions likely flared. Some researchers believe that small-scale clashes occurred, with humans and Neanderthals fighting over territory or hunting grounds. These weren't endless wars, but they may have contributed to Neanderthal decline. Yet, the story doesn't end in violence. DNA tells us there was also connection. Interbreeding occurred multiple times in different regions. This wasn't just forced encounters, it's very likely that genuine relationships existed, with families forming between humans and Neanderthals. Each child born of these unions carried a piece of both worlds, ensuring Neanderthal genes would never vanish. There's also evidence of cultural exchange. Some scholars suggest that humans may have borrowed toolmaking techniques from Neanderthals, while Neanderthals may have learned symbolic practices from humans. Instead of a one-way story of dominance, the relationship looks more like a dialogue, sometimes cooperative, sometimes competitive. But why, then, did Neanderthals disappear while we survived? The answer is complex. Climate shifts put enormous pressure on resources. Human groups may have been more mobile and better able to form large social networks, giving us an advantage in the long run. But crucially, Neanderthals didn't vanish completely. Their DNA proves they merged with us instead of fading into oblivion. So, when we talk about Neanderthals and modern humans, it's not just a story of conflict or conquest. It's a story of intertwined destinies. Love and war, rivalry and kinship all played a part. And in the end, the legacy of those encounters lives inside us. Every time we uncover new Neanderthal genes in our DNA, we're reminded that our ancestors didn't just fight or replace Neanderthals, they embraced them. Chapter 8: Did Neanderthals invent language? When we think about what makes humans unique, language is always near the top of the list. The ability to share ideas, tell stories, and pass knowledge through speech sets us apart. But what if Neanderthals had this gift too? Could they have invented or shared in the birth of language? For a long time, scientists believed Neanderthals lacked true speech. Early depictions painted them as grunting brutes, communicating only through gestures and simple sounds. But new discoveries have overturned that view. First, there's anatomical evidence. The Neanderthal hyoid, bone, small structure in the throat, essential for speech, looks nearly identical to ours. This suggests they had the physical ability to produce a wide range of sounds. Their vocal tracts were shaped in ways that could allow for complex speech, not just grunts or roars. Second, there's genetic evidence. Neanderthals carried the FOXP2 gene, often called the language gene, which plays a key role in speech and communication. Modern humans with damaged FOXP2 struggle with language, so the fact that Neanderthals had the same version strongly suggests they could speak. Third, there's behavioral evidence. The way Neanderthals lived required communication, coordinated hunts for massive animals, building shelters, caring for the sick, and teaching toolmaking skills. These aren't possible without some form of structured communication. Simple grunts wouldn't cut it. They needed words, planning, and shared meaning. Now, did Neanderthals have language as complex as ours, with grammar, storytelling, and abstract concepts? That's harder to say. They may not have had poetry or philosophy, but they almost certainly had the ability to discuss hunting strategies, warn of dangers, or teach children. Their communication may have been less elaborate, but it was effective enough for survival in harsh Ice Age environments. It's also possible that Neanderthals and early modern humans influenced each other's communication. Living side by side, they could have exchanged words or signals, enriching both groups' languages. So, did Neanderthals invent language? Maybe not in the way we think of invention, but they were likely part of its evolution. If language is humanity's greatest tool, then Neanderthals helped sharpen it long before our modern voices echoed across the globe. Chapter 9. The Neanderthal Legacy. Still living in us today. When we think of Neanderthals, we often imagine bones in museums or reconstructions in textbooks. But the truth is, their legacy is not buried in the past, it's alive in us, shaping who we are in subtle but powerful ways. The most direct legacy is, of course, DNA. As we've seen, people of non-African descent carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, while Africans may also have inherited some through ancient migrations. This may sound small, but across billions of humans, it means huge portions of the Neanderthal genome live on. These genes influence a wide range of traits. Some improve our immune systems, making us more resilient against diseases. Others affect skin color, hair type, and even how our bodies process certain foods. Studies suggest Neanderthal DNA is linked to sleep patterns, mood regulation, and how our bodies respond to temperature changes. In short, their legacy is woven into our everyday biology. But the Neanderthal legacy isn't just genetic, it's cultural. By studying them, we learn more about ourselves. The fact that Neanderthals made art, buried their dead, and cared for the weak challenges old assumptions about what it means to be human. Their story reminds us that creativity, compassion, and intelligence aren't unique to us alone. Even our understanding of family and social life is enriched by them. The evidence of caregiving of injured individuals, living long after their wounds, of children being protected and nurtured, shows that love and social bonds are not inventions of modern humans. They are ancient, shared across species. In a broader sense, the Neanderthal legacy is about perspective. For centuries, we imagined them as lesser humans, a species we left behind. But now we know they are part of our story, literally living within us. Their survival strategies helped shape our resilience. Their genetic contributions still affect our health. Their existence expands our definition of humanity. So, the next time you look in the mirror, remember, you are not just Homo sapiens, you are part Neanderthal too. Their legacy is not confined to caves or bones. It beats in our hearts, flows in our blood, and whispers in our genes every single day. Chapter 10. How Neanderthals shaped human evolution. When we talk about evolution, we often imagine a straight line, primitive ancestors slowly transforming into modern humans. But the truth is far more tangled. Neanderthals weren't just a side branch of humanity, they were an integral part of our evolutionary story. Without them, we might not be who we are today. First, there's the genetic impact. The interbreeding that took place between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens wasn't just a brief encounter, it permanently altered our genome. Neanderthal DNA provided vital advantages. Their immune system genes helped us survive new diseases as we spread into Europe and Asia. Other genes affected how we store fat, metabolize food, or adapt to colder climates. In evolutionary terms, Neanderthal DNA was like a starter pack that boosted our chances of survival outside Africa. Second, Neanderthals forced our species to innovate and compete. Living alongside another intelligent hominin meant modern humans had to step up their game. We developed better tools, stronger social networks, and perhaps even more sophisticated communication to stay ahead. In this way, Neanderthals acted as evolutionary pressure, pushing us to adapt faster and think bigger. Third, their disappearance shaped us in profound ways. When Neanderthals went extinct around 40,000 years ago, modern humans inherited their territories and resources. But we didn't just replace them, we carried their genes, and perhaps some of their cultural practices. The fusion of their legacy with ours created a new kind of humanity, one enriched by multiple hominin lineages. Finally, Neanderthals changed our understanding of ourselves. Their existence challenges the idea that humans are unique and separate from all other beings. Instead, they remind us that evolution is a web of connections, not a ladder of superiority. We are not the sole survivors of an evolutionary race. We are the product of cooperation, competition, and blending with others like us. So, how did Neanderthals shape human evolution? By giving us their genes, their resilience, and their influence. They were not evolutionary failures. They were partners in shaping the human story. Their fingerprints are everywhere in our bodies, our behaviors, and our history. The truth is, the Neanderthal never truly disappeared. They became part of us. And through us, their evolution continues. So, what do Neanderthals mean to us today? They mean that being human is not about standing alone, it's about connection. They mean that intelligence, compassion, and creativity aren't unique to Homo sapiens. They are shared across the human family. And they mean that inside each of us, traces of an ancient people still endure, whispering stories from an Ice Age world. Neanderthals are not gone. They live in our blood, in our genes, and in the shared history that makes us who we are.